Hi guys. So right now we are in the transit of the 8th gene key. And this is a gene key that goes from the shadow of mediocrity to the gift of style and the city of exquisiteness. And I wanted to start to speak about it from a human design perspective. So this is all in the individual circuitry. We have the 8th gate that goes from the throat center, connects with the first gate, and goes down and connects with the G center. And as we know, the G center is about identity, about love, and about direction. In the throat center are all these gates that says I know, and that are about creative expression. So speaking about the channel 8-1, we have the channel of inspiration, and we say it's the creative role model, because these are people that are here to be creatively different and that have the courage to stand out from the crowd and express their uniqueness. And by doing so, they are inspiring and empowering others to do the same, to be uniquely themselves. We can also say that this is it's a leadership channel. However, these people are not that interested about being followed. They're really just interested about being themselves and actually being valued for that contribution that they are making. And we can also call the 8th gate the agent, because actually they are here to find creative expression and to be the agent for that. And it's also they can also be the agent for somebody else's creative expression. And when we have the first gate and not the 8th gate, we have a person that has a lot of creativity, and it's important for that person to find an outlet for that. So it comes, so it is expressed through the throat. And when we look at the shadow frequency, and now we're going in more to the gene keys and looking at the frequency band of the key. Mediocrity is living a life that is in the comfort zone, you could say, that is superficial and gray. And the dilemma of this frequency is imitation. So it's basically looking outside of ourselves and deciding, okay, this looks good, so this is what I'm going to create, this is what I'm going to express, this is what I want in my life, instead of, like we said before, coming from the inner diamond heart, you could say, and create from there. And it is quite subtle, can be a subtle shadow, because many times it looks pretty good. It looks, when we decide to imitate something, of course we're going to decide to imitate something that looks good. And if I go to my own life, I can see that I'm quite rebellious person, and I have set up my life and lived my life in a way that is not conventional. However, there are things in my life where I've fallen into this shadow, and I have the first gate. I don't have the 8th gate in my profile. And one example is when I moved back to Sweden after about a decade abroad, and when I was doing so, I was like, okay, somebody who moves back to Stockholm right now, what would they choose? And I decided to buy an apartment in downtown Stockholm, with a balcony like to the south. The sun would be there in the afternoons, and there were wooden floors and a minimalistic Scandinavian style. And just like thinking that that's what people would do if they moved back. And then I signed the contract, and I think it was 3 months before I would get the keys. And in these 3 months, actually, everything changed. There was something that really clicked in me, and that said, you're not a follower. You cannot pretend to be a follower. So I wasn't there to pick up the keys. I had a friend doing that for me, and I had already moved to Paris by the time. And in Paris, I had a network, and I had a lot of possibilities. I had lived there before, so it was kind of a way to really start doing something creative right away. But then what happened was that there was another part of me, or the same part of me, that said, well, you already did this. Okay, it's long ago. It was right after high school that I lived there. But at the same time, it was like, this chapter has been read once for me. maybe it would be new in other people's eye what I was doing, but in my own experience, it would have been something that I had already done. So I had to kind of let that go as well, and then I took a project in some completely different, somewhere where I hadn't been. Sorry. So I fell into that kind of mediocrity, you could say, or the comfort zone, or the imitation, or the kind of artificial what would other people want or do in my situation. And sometimes there can be many steps where we kind of do that before we kind of break out and follow that inner longing of creating something that we haven't already created. And I kind of also I like to speak about identity when we speak about the eighth gene key, because really, when we are in the shadow, we are kind of stuck to that identity and to who we think we are, and how we want it to look. And also there can be, when Richard speaks about the shadow, there can be a reaction in the sense that we don't want to look mediocre. So then we kind of react to that, and we create a life that is kind of a rebellious life, it looks like, because we don't want to look mediocre. But as long as it is a reaction or a repression, we know that we're still in the shadow frequency. It's really, because it's really based in fear. When we don't want to look mediocre, it's still based in fear. So that when we let go of that identity that has to look in a certain way on the outside, we go back to the inside and we live from there, and we don't care about how it looks on the outside. That's the kind of rebellious soul that we want to tap into in the gift frequency of the self-expression, the creative self-expression of the eighth gene key. And I also feel, and this is even kind of going up in the frequencies, we can look at it together with the second gene key and the codon ring of water, and knowing that these two gene keys are the feminine archetypes, and that they really trust and they really flow, and they go from the inner outer, and they embrace what's on the outside. But the love and the flow comes from the inside, and it's soft, and it's receptive, and it's yielding, and it's not afraid of anything. And together also, maybe it's good to mention the 14th gene key. We spoke about it last week because it makes the channel with the second gene key in the ring of water, and it's that fire element. So it both connects to the second gene key through the channel, and it connects to the eighth gene key through the programming partner. And it is that fire, it is that power, the sacral power, and the gift frequency is competence. So we can see how competence and style come together, because when we have the courage to step in to our own style, that then we get that power from the sacral. And when we look at, for example, the incarnation crosses that have the 8 and the 14 in them, we have the cross of contagion. That is also, the other two gene keys are the 30 and the 29, about lightness and devotion. And people that have the cross of contagion, for example, the personality sun in the 8th, and the personality earth in the 14th, which is the same as saying the life's work and the evolution. These are people that are, they have a vision and they have power, and they are committed to what they do, and that is very contagious. So, and that's where people that tune into the gift frequency of the 8th gene key and the 14th gene key, they are going to succeed in a way, because they are role models for actually trusting in their own vision and in their own style and living that. And that is contagious. And that's why people and resources are going to come to them. And this is a cross where I actually recognized this cross all the time without knowing that, without knowing that people have it. I can feel it because it's very powerful. And this goes for it. So even if we don't have the cross, when we have the courage to tap into our own uniqueness and unlock that sacral power that comes automatically when we do that, then there's not really anything that can stop us. And I feel like the highest frequency of this gene key has to do a lot with that ring of water, and with actually something that might look weak, and also how we have been looking at the feminine and kind of not seeing the inherent beauty and power of the feminine, of the trusting, of the receptive. So I felt like I wanted to end by reading a quote, one of Richard's quotes that I really feel it's very, very beautiful, and that has a lot to do with this. So it says, "The very quality that makes water weak is yielding, is the power that allows it to defeat all else, from the hardest rock to the most raging fire." And this is, I mean, it's something worth thinking about. And sometimes when we go through life and we try to look on the outside and do everything that is perfect or powerful, and to become something, and afraid of being who we really are, that in the long run is not the most powerful thing to do. But when we have the courage to invite the flow of life, and invite our uniqueness, and step into that, and actually again balance, you could say, or thread the feminine with the masculine, the water with the fire, the action with the beingness, that's when we really become powerful, and that's when we become role models for others, because we have those two polarities that are in balance inside of us. So I feel like that is the message from this week, from the 8th Gene Key. Thank you, guys.